According to legend, a goat herder in Ethiopia discovered coffee around 850 AD. Eventually, the beverage reached Italy, where the first European coffee house opened in 1645. Today, about 2 billion cups of coffee are drunk each day around the world, making coffee the second most valuable trading commodity after oil. Coffee's flavor depends on the region where it grows and the way coffee makers roast and blend the beans. Here in Costa Rica, they grow coffee plants from sprouted seeds kept in containers for a full year before they transplant them into the field. From seed to first harvest takes about 2 years. Coffee plants flower over the course of 3 days, covering the fields with fragrant jasmine-like blooms. Over 6 months' time, the buds grow and ripen into red cherries that contain the coffee bean. Pickers harvest the red cherries, leaving the green ones to ripen. They'll return to pick the cherries from the same plant 5 times in 3 months as they ripen. Pickers do their best to have no more than 2 green for every 100 red cherries they harvest. They empty their bins into bags and load them into trucks. Each bin produces about 2 kilos of coffee beans, enough to make about 200 cups of coffee. The fresher the berry, the better the flavor. Cherries picked in the morning are at the wet mill, ready for processing that afternoon. At the wet mill, water channels wash the cherries and drop them off at a worm screw. It loads them into a pulping machine to remove the outer skin and fruit. A rotating drum presses the cherries against the wall of the pulper and squeezes out the bean. From the pulping machine, the beans flow in water to 2 large rotating cylinders. They sift the beans to separate them from any of the hard green cherries that passed through the pulping machine. Next, the beans bathe in more water, which draws out a thick, sugary substance known as miel, honey in Spanish. The coffee maker then feels the washed beans to make sure they're no longer sticky. The beans then drop into the drying bin below. Workers now lay out the beans to dry in the traditional way, outdoors on a cement patio. For 4 days, they rake over the beans as they dry in the hot sun. At night, they let the beans rest to extract the most flavor. Once the beans are dry, they go into a milling machine. Inside, large stones grind away the parchment-like hull from the bean. Drying methods vary among coffee makers. They're a closely guarded secret. The beans can also dry mechanically in rotating drums that pump in heated air. Workers closely monitor the process and empty the drums when the beans are dry. A supervisor smells them to check for a vinegar-like odor. That would mean the beans are fermenting, a result of improper drying. The dry beans have their husks removed, then go onto an oscillating table that separates them by weight into 3 grades, the heaviest being the first grade beans. Workers pour out each grade into burlap bags. Their contents must weigh in at exactly 69 kilos per bag. Finally, they stitch them up and stack them for shipping. Next, we'll see the whole process that turns these green coffee beans into a steaming cup of gourmet coffee. Coffee boasts over 800 flavor characteristics, at least double those of wine. Roasting reduces the amount of caffeine in the bean. To achieve a dark espresso roast, the beans remain in the roaster the longest, so they have the least caffeine. It's the concentrated brew that packs espresso's punch. These green coffee beans have just arrived from the wet mill. Workers pour them into a blending bin that feeds a roasting machine heated to 180 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, the oils in the beans combust and the beans roast in less than 20 minutes. The master roaster must regularly check their progress. When he determines they're ready, he sets off a light spray of water in the roaster to extinguish the beans. Then they pour into a bin where they're cooled by forced air. As they roast, the beans go from green to golden brown, then black. Before roasting an entire shipment of beans, coffee makers first test a small batch. They follow a standardized procedure at the plant's testing laboratory. First, they roast 300 grams of beans in a small gas oven for a few minutes. Then, a professional taster measures out the beans and feeds them into an electric grinder. She prepares 4 separate cups of coffee with the same coarse grind. It takes 4 tastes to make sure all is well, 20 to detect the source of a problem roast. She begins by pushing aside the foam at the surface to release the intense aromas, a technique known as breaking the cup. She smells each cup in turn, a sure way to know if something is wrong with the roast. Next, she skims the surface to remove the grounds. She takes a sip, slipping the coffee over her tongue to get the full flavor before spitting it out. Now she can determine how she will balance the blend of beans to create a recipe for the perfect cup of coffee. Back on the factory floor, the various beans for the blend go into a grinder. It will produce the desired grind, coarse, medium, or a fine espresso like this. Now the coffee is ready for packaging. It's a fully automated process thanks to this machine that forms, fills, and seals the bags. Gourmet coffee must go piping hot from the grinder to the bag to ensure freshness. As the machine seals each bag, it pumps in nitrogen to replace the oxygen that makes coffee stale. The machine separates the bags, and they fall onto a custom-designed conveyor belt that weighs each one as it passes through. Over at the espresso machine, the barista demonstrates the technique required for a perfect espresso. She puts 7 grams of ground coffee into the holder, tamps it down firmly, then wedges it in place. The machine applies water pressure to extract the espresso. The distinctive foam is a sign this coffee is first rate. The barista also demonstrates how to use a French press or cafetière. She adds boiling water to the coffee grounds, then pushes them down to the base. Again, she applies pressure, manually this time, to extract the coffee's aroma. Finally, she demonstrates how Costa Ricans make a traditional cup of coffee. She places a correador, a fine cotton sieve, over the cup, pressing on the ground coffee with a spoon as she pours in boiling water. No matter which one you choose, with the right gourmet roast, all 3 methods will produce an outstanding cup of rich, flavorful coffee.